You're listening to the REI Marketing Nerds Podcast, the leading resource for real estate investors who want to dominate their market online. Dan Barrett is the founder of AdWords Nerds, a high-tech digital agency focusing exclusively on helping real estate investors like you get more leads and deals online, outsmart your competition, and live a freer, more awesome life. And now, your host, Dan Barrett.
All right, this is Daniel Barrett here with Chris Music from PS Homebuyers. Oh, no, I'm sorry. It's psbuyhouses.com. See, Chris, you know, I literally asked you about this before we even started, and I wrote it down and everything, and I still said the wrong thing, so I apologize. But how are you, man? What's going on?
I am doing great today, Dan. Appreciate you having me on. How's everything on your end?
Everything on my end is all right. It is cold and dry, and I spent the morning without any internet because we had power lines come down we had a whole bunch of wind and everything. So it's generally Connecticut type, winter weather. You, however, you are over in the San Francisco Bay Area, right? So this is where you are currently buying houses?
Yeah, that is correct. Definitely a little different weather climate than you guys are having over there for sure.
Yeah.
If something like that happened to me, I would not be as lax about it.
Well, and so I'm curious, man. So I definitely want to dig into you a little bit and kind of how you got started investing in everything. But the Bay Area is one of these things where, as someone who's involved, pretty tangentially, but still involved in the tech industry and kind of what I do, Bay Area is something I hear about all the time. I've never actually been there. So what is that market like now? What's it like to be an investor there? Like what's the housing market like? Just paint people a picture of that area if they're not familiar.
Yeah, I mean, I'll definitely give it my best shot. I do feel like that is a very loaded question for several reasons. But before I jump into that, I will say if you have not had the pleasure to visit the beautiful Bay Area, you definitely should hop on a plane and get out here sometime. There's a lot of fun stuff to see.
Yeah.
But yeah, the reason why I say it's kind of a loaded question is just because I don't really think that there is a quote unquote Bay Area market. It's just there's so many different areas, different, as far as even economically, just the prices of the homes, all these things, and they kind of operate independently of each other. So, the areas that I buy in, there's just such a difference between some of them. I can't really, it doesn't do them justice to lump them all into one quote unquote market, if that makes sense. We have homes that we buy that are, $100,000. We bought homes for $2 million, right? And it's all kind of within, 40 miles of each other. So it's just such a drastic, difference depending on kind of where you're located. And a lot of that, I guess, is centered kind of what you mentioned earlier as far as the tech industry. The closer you are to those kind of hubs like Silicon Valley or San Francisco, those markets are going to be a little more expensive. As you move further, out towards, inland, even getting out towards Sacramento, things just get cheaper, right?
So it's a pretty, when you say the Bay Area, is that a pretty sprawling, widespread geographical area?
Well, to me it is, but I guess once again, it's one of those things, depending on where you are located in the Bay Area, you consider the Bay Area to be a different range of stuff. I think, folks down in, the South Bay, Silicon Valley, they kind of consider just that little region to be the Bay Area, and folks that live a little bit more north or east are not quite considered to be in the Bay Area, where just for me, I'm actually located in Concord, which is, for geographical references, maybe 40 minutes inland of San Francisco. I consider this to be the Bay Area, and even all the way towards Sacramento, which is about another hour, inland from me.
Yeah.
So, it just kind of all depends where you're from and how you define it. But for my purposes, I consider it to be, this whole kind of area, which is, I don't know exactly what the radius is, but from San Jose all the way out to Sacramento.
Yeah.
Which covers a lot of housing, and like I said, a lot of just different types of housing.
So tell me a little bit about you. Like, how did you get started with investing? Like, what was your introduction to real estate investing? Like, is your background in real estate?
No. So, I do not have a background in real estate or anything like that, but I guess not too uncommon from a lot of folks that are in real estate. I was gifted the book Rich Dad Poor Dad, several years back. I would think it was in 2010 when I first read that book. And at the time, I had just moved back to the Bay Area. I lived a few different places, but I moved back to be near my family, and got a great job. I was happy with it. Just was going to be totally content to just work that job until the day I retired and have a comfortable life. But I got that book and I read it, and I'm sure for most of the folks who have read it, it's not like it gives you any specific, actionable plan on what you should do, but it just opened my eyes and, kind of made me think about a few different things. So because of that, I started researching and, just jumping online, talking to folks, whoever I thought, might have some answers for me as far as different strategies of what I could do, beyond my normal 9 to 5 to try to change, my just financial picture for my family. And I landed on real estate after kind of going through that process. To me, it just made sense. It was something that, was just real, well, not to use, a pun, but concrete. It's actually, dirt, it's wood, it sticks. I thought about the stocks, but, the things you're going to beat the stock market, in my opinion, it's just a whole different type of game, right? Mm-hmm. Whereas the concept of real estate, I'm not saying it's simple, but it was definitely something that I felt like I could understand. So I kind of just focused in on how, real estate is what I want to do, but then it's like, what do I want to do in real estate? Because, you quickly find out there's so many different kind of avenues you can take within this one, industry, right?
Yeah.
So that's kind of how I got into real estate, and the impetus of it was just reading that book and kind of just changing my mindset as to what I wanted to do with my days.
If you were going to get someone into real estate investing today, like let's say you through the magic of time travel, you run into your younger self and you don't disrupt the time continuum or whatever, is that the book you would give them? Rich Dad, Poor Dad, it's been brought up on this podcast multiple times. And every time I hear it, I feel weird because I read it too relatively early, but it didn't hit me the way that it's hit so many people that got into real estate investing, right? So I'm curious, like if you were going to try to get your younger self or someone else into real estate investing, is that the book that you'd recommend, or would you kind of advise them to do something else? If they didn't have the background in real estate, they don't even know if they want to do it yet.
Yeah, well, I mean, like I said, when I read the book, initially, it wasn't like it spoke to me like, oh, like you got to dive into real estate. It was more like, hey, like you need to do something beyond just working this, normal 9 to 5 job. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but just for me, there was, it opened my eyes to a different possibility of what could be out there for me. So if I was to, suggest a book or something to a younger individual who was interested in just learning about something, that definitely would be the book. I mean, it's had a great impact on my life. I said, not saying that specific book gave me a plan or an outline for anything. It's not like it gave you actionable steps, but it's a concept, right? It's more of like it's a paradigm shifting type read, at least it was for me. And because of that, I started, down this road that kind of got me to where I am today. And so, but the thing about it, I really haven't recommended it to many people. And because I feel like it is such a powerful book, and the message that it provides, that if you, I'm trying to find how to say it, like it's not for everybody in a sense, right? Like it's not a book where, if you're perfectly happy with your life and, you're just going down this road and you are content, it can do more harm than good in a lot of ways, right? I mean, there's an old saying, ignorance is bliss. So, I do try to be very mindful of that. I don't want to necessarily give it to somebody if they're not going to take actionable steps to try to change something about what's going on in their life, because you could take somebody who's perfectly happy and now make them kind of, discontent, but not actually discontent enough to go do anything about it, right?
Yeah, it's funny, man. I feel like all the best books are kind of like that, right? They're not for everybody. And it reminds me of this is a really kind of useful general principle. And it was in the context of medicine, right? Where it's like anything that really has the potential to help you also has the potential to really hurt you, right? So like, aspirin is something that we all kind of take without thinking about it. You get a headache, you pop some aspirin or some ibuprofen or whatever it is. But there are tons of people that die from overdoses on that stuff every year, right? And then the flip side of that is like, if I'm promoting some awesome medical treatment where if I say like, oh, hey, Chris, I'm going to smear kelp all over your face and that's going to cure your whatever. Yeah, it's going to make you taller or something, right? If you ask me what's the side effects of that? And I say like, oh, well, there are no side effects. It's like, well, that means it's not doing anything, right? If there's no way you can misuse it, it doesn't really have the capacity to help you a whole lot. And it's interesting that you kind of raised that point about the book where it's like, well, in the right position, this can really help you, but it's not for everybody. And you kind of got to be careful with that. I feel like all the best books are kind of like that.
Yeah, I mean, that definitely makes sense. And it's something I would agree with. I mean, reading a book like Rich Dad, Poor Dad or any truly powerful book is in a lot of ways like taking a dose of medicine, right? Mm-hmm. And either it's gonna work out for you or it's gonna make you feel some kind of way, but it is it's gonna have an impact on you, right, one way or another.
Yeah.
And I'd imagine that's kind of the point of or the goal of an author when they're writing a book is to get some sort of reaction and feeling from people that are reading their words, right?
So what was the transition from you? You mentioned Rich Dad, Poor Dad kind of got the engine running, right? But it didn't really have a clear map of where you wanted to go. So what was the transition to you? Like, how did you break into saying like, well, okay, I don't have a background in real estate. How did you then transition into doing actual real estate investing, doing your first couple deals?
Yeah. So like I said, I think I first read that book in 2010. And, it got me kind of just, like I said, got my wheels spinning. I read a few other books from that, Rich Dad line. There's lots of them out there on different topics. Started doing research online, found the Bigger Pockets website, which I'm sure a lot of real estate folks are aware of. And just really, dove into trying to learn everything I could on, real estate and the different types of investing in real estate. Started going to networking events and trying to connect with folks that were actually already doing, this thing that I wanted to do. Mm. And I would say that probably for about a year, I was doing the research, going to networking events and stuff like that. Obviously I had a full-time job at the time, so this was all kind of nights, weekends type time I was putting in on this kind of side endeavor at that time. And after that, I kind of thought I had a plan in place that I was going to start executing. And then so I did kind of start doing things, meeting agents, making offers, finding, investors, lenders that I could leverage to, actually buy properties when I found them, kind of building, quote unquote, building my team, right? There's lots of learning lessons and stumbles along the way in that process, but, that's kind of how it all, at least initially started, was just spending time kind of educating myself, meeting folks. And then once I thought I had the idea or had it all, quote unquote, figured out, then I kind of started trying to do it. And that's when you really learn the thing, right? Is when you're out there doing it and making the mistakes. So
yeah, that's certainly definitely true. So let's fast forward now, because you've been doing this for a while. So explain kind of what your business model is. Like, are you wholesaling, you flipping? What kind of deals do you do? That kind of thing.
Yeah. So, fast forward to today, primarily what I do is flip houses. I would say, maybe 85 to 90% of the real estate transactions that I'm involved in is my company purchasing a home, remodeling it, rehabbing it, and then selling it on the open market to a retail buyer. I do on occasion do wholesale if the property doesn't quite fit what I'm looking for, or maybe it's a little too far away, or my plate's just too full at the time. Then I'll kick that off to another investor for a fee. Last year, I did acquire my first rental property and got another one going this year. So that's kind of something that I am branching into as well as kind of more of a long-term hold.
Yeah.
So there's a couple other things that are happening, but the primary thing that, that we do is flip houses.
Cool. Well, that's like the classic rich dad stuff, right? It's like the buy and hold rental property.
Yeah, I mean, it's a whole different strategy, right? Obviously, it's kind of more that long-term perspective on things and just building up that, cash flow, which is, a term synonymous with everything I've ever seen in the rich dad family. Is just, all about the cash flow, right?
Yeah.
But, my thought was, well, I got to build up some money to go buy some cash flow. So that's where the flipping thing came into play. It's just, you're building chunks of money quickly. I mean, well, if you're doing it right, that is.
Well, yes, ideally.
I mean, that's the objective.
Are you an investor who wants to dominate your local market? Do you want more leads and deals online? Then download your copy of the Motivated Seller Blueprint absolutely free at www.adwordsnerds.com/gift. What are you waiting for? Go to www.adwordsnerds.com/gift right now to get your copy of the Motivated Seller Blueprint.
So what do you think your strong suit as an investor is? Because there are a lot of people who, they read Rich Dad, they jump on Bigger Pockets, and they never do a deal, right? They just never connect the dots in whatever it is. What do you think are like your strong suits or the things that you're particularly good at that you think have contributed to your success? Because you've been doing this for a while. It's not like you started investing yesterday. So why do you think that is? Like, what do you attribute that to?
Yeah. And I mean, I guess I can mention a couple of things that I think have really helped in just, me being able to develop in my real estate, investing career. I'm not going to sit here and say that I'm stronger in these areas than others, because I just don't know that. But a couple of things that I think were very important to me as I was getting started, and as I kind of further down the road today, at least initially, which was huge for me, was just always pushing forward, right? Every day I was making sure that when I got off work, I sat down and I was doing a little something to further, this goal of mine. Every weekend I was working. I was going to work, late at night, going to work on the weekends, just put that time in that I needed to make sure I was always pushing forward, right? I mean, sometimes it was a slow grind, especially, when you're first getting something started, regardless of whatever you're trying to do, right? When you're first entering into doing something, it's going to take time, energy, and effort to get it moving. But that classic snowball thing, once it starts moving, right, it'll start carrying itself after a while with the momentum. But just that thought that I'm just going to keep pushing forward on this, regardless of, the things people are saying, you can't do this, or not being able to find properties or whatever, I just always had in my head, somebody is doing this out there in the world. Lots of people are successful at this. Well, I can be one of those people, right? So that was one thing, just the persistence. But another thing that I think is very important is, and I don't remember exactly where I heard it, but somewhere along the way, and it made sense to me and it stuck with me, is that I always try to treat, every potential house that I look at, or when I'm breaking it down, kind of doing my analysis on it and sticking it into my spreadsheets. And I always try to be very just realistic about the numbers and always stick to those numbers and those projections. People in general, you can get, emotional. And when you're emotional, you start to make, decisions that are not the most rational. And, that's not necessarily how you want to operate a business, at least in my opinion. So I've always tried to make sure that I stick to, these parameters that I have put in place, because they're there for a reason. And that's to protect me from making, decisions that are going to be, cost me, whether I said time, money, whatever the case may be. So, I know, like, when I was, once again, taking it back and kind of getting going in this, I had maybe done a couple of projects, but I wanted to do more. Just struggling trying to find that next house, because I didn't quite have a whole system built up yet. I was just kind of buying one house and hoping that I could find another one after that. Well, in that time, you're thinking, okay, well, maybe I can kind of relax a little bit on my profit expectation, or maybe the rehab's not going to cost me as much as I want to think it will, and kind of just finagle the numbers a little bit so that you can buy the home, right? Where, and obviously a handful of years back when the market's just, roaring up, of course, it probably worked out, right? But as I'm sure a lot of real estate folks have noticed over the past handful of months, the market has turned a little bit on us, at least here in the Bay Area.
Yeah.
And, it's times like that where, having those numbers, and being very, just deliberate about sticking to what you set as your parameters is, really going to protect, you. And I feel has been gone a long way in protecting me from possible problem properties as I've gone through my career. Having, where I am now, if we have a couple of bad ones, is it going to, tank us? No. But, when you're first getting rolling on something, you just don't have that kind of capacity, right? Had things gone too sideways, at the beginning, I might not be here, right? Whether because I couldn't afford it or I just would have given up because I would have thought I wasn't able to do it, right?
I think that's absolutely huge. I mean, I can't remember the actual quote, but I can kind of paraphrase Charlie Munger, who's Warren Buffett's partner over at Berkshire Hathaway, where he says, like, you don't have to be super smart. You can get really far by just not doing stupid stuff, right? And it's that temptation to, hey, I'm so close to doing this. Maybe I can just fudge my numbers and make it work. It's funny. It reminds me of like, I track all my calories and everything every day when I eat. And there's so much temptation where you're like putting something on your plate. I'm literally like weighing it out. Right. And I'm like calculating calories. And I'm like, oh, like that's like a cup. Right. And I'm just kind of eyeballing it. And it's, it doesn't seem like it matters much in the moment. But then like 2 weeks later, I'll be like, well, why hasn't my weight changed? Right.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, because you cheated a whole bunch. And even if it's like 1% here and 1% there, it adds up. You know what I mean? It adds up. So I think that discipline of being like, these are my numbers. And if I don't hit those numbers, I'm going to walk away from this deal. Right. I think it's such a huge skill set that I think a lot of people gloss over because they're so focused on the goal, right? They're so focused on like the great stuff that could happen that they kind of forget to protect their downside. Do you think that's the case?
Yeah, I mean, I think you summed it up, great right there in that assessment. Because the way I look at it is this business or these things, they all can be, correlated to other aspects of life, right? You just use an example of your nutrition and eating and all that. It all kind of, your mindset towards one thing can be applied to these other things as well, right?
Yeah. And
I don't know if it's, discipline or whatever the appropriate term is, but yeah, that concept of just protecting, the downside or just being, mindful and averse to potential risk, when everything's going great or you're reaching for something, it's easy to kind of not take into account the weight of what could come on the if things were not to go, as ideally as you were hoping. And just, just being able to, just like I said, you set parameters, you set these things up at the time when you did it, you did it for a reason, not saying those things can't be adjusted, as you move forward or as the market changes or your expectation changes, but you don't just do it in the moment to make it fit one particular project or one particular goal or thing that you want, right? You're kind of rationalizing it to make sense. And when you start doing that, well, you're not really, being the logical business person or dieter or whatever you want to be, right?
Yeah. I think it's, you kind of alluded to this too, but a really great market will cover up a lot of stupidity, right? So you could get into a deal in a really amazing market, do all your numbers wrong, go way over on all your costs, and still come out ahead because the market just happened to go up enough to make you money, right? And I think in a correcting market, which it seems like that's, pretty much the consensus of everyone that's been on this show and, of my clients and the investors that I talk to, who are doing hundreds and hundreds of deals, right? A lot of people are doing really high volume. Everybody's consensus is that the market is correcting, that we're kind of, we've been in a really great kind of growth period and now we're kind of headed back the other way. And I don't think it's, a crash kind of scenario, but I think it's safe to say that things are, normalizing or whatever you want to call it. And in those situations, knowing your numbers makes all the difference in the world, right? Because there's not that extra buffer of like free money kind of floating around there in the economy. I think that's absolutely huge.
Yeah, I definitely think that is, more, crucial now than it has been over the past. Well, I mean, as long as I've been doing this, ever since that downturn, there is, the market's just been on the way up, and I'm not saying that I haven't been helped out a few times, but because of that, but it is definitely as the market shifts a little bit, it's gonna separate some folks. A lot of people that are, were doing okay or kind of just getting into this thing, they may not be as inclined to do so. Considering that like I said, the market's correcting a little bit and prices aren't appreciating as rapidly as they once were.
Yeah. For people that want to learn more about you, Chris, or want to learn a little bit more about what you're doing, first of all, the website is psbuyshouses.com. That's like the letter P, the letter S, buyshouses.com. Is that the best place for people to find you, or is there somewhere they can find you on social media, anything like that?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, just more than happy to connect with anybody who wants to chat or anything of that nature. We do have the website, which is obviously more kind of geared towards, sellers, folks who may be looking to sell their property. You could email me, which would be chris@psbuyshouses.com. We do have all the, just normal social media accounts, got a Facebook page, Instagram, all that. I think it's all under Proud Start LLC. Full disclosure, I'm not the biggest kind of online, savvy person. So we do have all that stuff. I do have somebody that updates it, and I will get notification if you reach out through those, those different formats. But I think the easiest way and the most direct way, if you actually want to chat with me, just shoot me an email. We could jump on a call or something. Kind of most efficient way, I would, in my opinion, to just connect with somebody.
Yeah, that's awesome. So definitely, if you guys are listening to this and you want to reach out to Chris, I highly recommend it. He's been doing really amazing things out there in the Bay Area. He's a super, super smart guy. One of our oldest clients, I will say, Chris, one of our longest running clients. So that's pretty cool.
No, I did not realize that. I mean, it's been a while. I know I've been rolling with you guys for a while. I did not realize it was, I had that sort of tenure within the company though.
Yeah. When you started working with us, I think it was just me. It may have been just me. I'm not sure how far back it goes, but that was a long time ago. It's been a while.
Yeah, I mean, it's been a few years, and I do remember, our first conversations. Yeah, it was you and I chatting. Obviously, now you have a great team, and I do enjoy working with them as well.
Yeah.
But I mean, you guys, I've been very pleased and happy with what our relationship has done for my business. So.
Yeah, man. Well, it's been my pleasure, and I really appreciate it. And definitely for anybody listening, look Chris up. Like I said, you can find him at psbuyshouses.com. He's buying houses over in the San Francisco Bay Area. Chris Music, thank you so much, man. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, you're welcome, Dan. I do appreciate you having me on, and looking forward to hearing how funny I sound on the podcast when you put it up.
Well, if it makes you feel any better, I have never been able to listen to a complete podcast with me on it. I cannot get through it. So you don't have to feel bad. If you don't like it, don't force it. Just have someone else listen to it for you and tell you how it went.
Kind of give me the highlights. Definitely might do that.
All right. Cheers, man. I will talk to you very soon, Chris.
All right. You have a good one.
Bye.
This is thepodcastfactory.com.